Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here, and this is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the month of October and the week of October 2nd through the 8th in this episode. And just a couple little things first. Remember, the Astrological Winds channel is a video blog. It's a free one that I do on YouTube every week. And it's also available on all kinds of podcasts. So if you don't want to do the YouTube thing, you can just get the audio version of that, of it on a bunch of podcasts. So just look up the Astrological Winds channel and you'll find it on one of your favorite podcasts, and that's a great way to tune in. Like I said, it is a free service, and I'd really love it if you could pay it forward and pass on the link to someone else that you think might be interested in it. Highly appreciate that if you can do that. And the other way you guys can support me is when or if you need a reading, a professional astrology reading of any type, please get in touch with me. I've been doing readings for over 20 years professionally. I was trained 7 years before that to do them. And, we can get that process started, and, there's no commitment to, ask me about it. And best way to do that is through my, contact me through my email, which is matthure823@gmail.com. That's matthure823@gmail.com. And I'll have a lot more details of that stuff at the very end of the blog for those who are interested. Just stay tuned in to the end, and I'll give you more details on that information. Okay, like to remind everyone every week, and especially if you're new to the blog and, maybe you're relatively new to astrology, don't really understand a lot of it, don't get stuck on the astrological terms that I'm speaking of. You want to really hear the interpretations of those terms, because that's telling you what the energy is this week, and even this month in October, which I'm going to go through this week, in this blog too. And that way you can use that energy. That's the key thing to hone in on, is my point, is not to get lost on me saying, oh, this and this and this in astrological terms, and then thinking to yourself, oh, what does he mean? And then missing the interpretation. So, okay, let's do October first. And, the monthly, it's I'm looking more at the outer planets and what they're doing over a long term, because it's a more long-term change. And there's 4 things I'd like to mention about October. Not a real lot. Once again, none of the outer planets have any exact aspects to one another this month, so that keeps the activity a little bit lower, or just percolating kind of where it is. But one of the things that is going to happen with the outer planets, however, this month, is one of them is going to go direct. They're all retrograde. They've all been retrograde for a while, and so Pluto is going to be the first one to turn around and start going direct again over the next few months, and that happens on October 10th. So really, when Pluto goes direct, it'll be like a 7-month period about that Pluto will be direct, and this is when we're going to bring out our ambitions and our desires to change things in the world. We're going to externalize that stuff. We're going to find ourselves at times in positions of power or influence. And, and I really honestly believe no matter where you are in life, on the social ladder or whatever, you have some influence over people in your life. It might even be one other person, but part of the Pluto journey when it goes direct is where we start to externalize and have an influence over the people around us. That's kind of tied into what our ambitions are, what we want to change. And the important thing, and the key point to all this, is that when you're doing that, you want to make sure you are including those who you do have influence or power of, that the ambition that you have, the changes that you want to bring in also have benefit for them too, and then you'll get the most out of Pluto that way. Pluto will actually, cooperate the most and bring you the furthest that you can go. Like, you may actually be surprised at how far it can take you. If you're too focused on yourself with Pluto, it has a tendency, maybe you can push and get some of the things you want, but it also can bring a great fall, our own self-destruction, if we get too wrapped up in it. Now, what's interesting too about this Pluto going direct is we're right at the very end of Capricorn. Remember, Pluto had gone into Aquarius for 6 weeks or so in the spring. We got a little bit of a taste of Pluto in Aquarius. This is it. This is the very end of Pluto in Capricorn. And, if Pluto is a body, your body coming out of the ocean, this is like the toe is the last thing coming out of the water of this age that has been going on for about 20 years now, and was all about Pluto showing the Capricorn the structures of our society, those who are in power in our society, the kind of the shadow side of that stuff, so that none of that stuff is hidden anymore. How like things are needing transformation and change, that they are decaying and they need rebirthing. And so that kind of energy has really been exposed, and now it's the very end of Pluto in Capricorn and the very last part of this, and we're going to go full on into Pluto in Aquarius in January, and then that'll be it for over 20 years. It'll be Pluto in Aquarius, where we'll get to see a lot of technology, science, the intellect, logic, people's values that are really strong, social justice type issues really being pushed, but also the shadow side of what technology and science and too much logic and not enough of the other parts of life directing what we do. So we're going to go through this, seeing the shadow side of Aquarius for the next 20 years or so too. So this, is the beginning of the end, the very, very end of Pluto in Capricorn when it goes direct. So the very next day, interestingly enough, this is a really interesting, just amazing how astrology works at times. Mars is going to change signs and go into Scorpio, which not only is Mars the ruler of Scorpio, it's super strong there, but that's also the sign that Pluto has most affinity with too. So Mars and Pluto are like the lower and higher octave of one another, like, how we are motivated and what our desire to make things change, and then going out and acting on that. Mars is very individualistic, whereas Pluto, like I said, has more influence over the power things. But once again, Mars going into Scorpio, Mars is all about, like I said, our motivation, so what we're going to choose to do, to act upon. And when it goes into Scorpio, we really are motivated very strongly by what we believe in and the things that we're doing, and we move very, very deeply. So this really coincides with Pluto going direct at the same time, where we can really make some strong movement forward, deep movement forward in, our ambitions and our actions and our motivations for the next couple months. And Mars will stay in Scorpio until around Thanksgiving on November 24th. Then the other thing I want to mention for October, it's the beginning of the second eclipse season of the year, okay? And that will be October 14th. There will be a solar eclipse while there's a new moon in Libra. And so the south node is in Libra, and that's why, we're getting the eclipse there. And this is going to, I think what this is going to do, it's going to be a lot about relationships, Libra, right? And it's also going to be a lot about past relationships, like people from the past that we may have to come in and deal with. There may even be like long-awaited karmic duties or bonds that come up from people in the past that we may have to like deal with, and find ways of being graceful and diplomatic about doing that. So that's I'll get into a lot more of that energy when we get to next week and have that actual new moon and solar eclipse. And then at the end of the month, there's a full moon in Taurus, near the beginning of Taurus. Even though the North Node's in Aries, it's, they're still close enough, and it is a very partial lunar eclipse at the same time. So, once again, I think what this one's going to be more about with the moon in Taurus is actually like, seeing once again that resource issue of having the full moon's light really expose resource issues and possible instability and tension and decisions that we have to make in response to that. And it's interesting with the North Node in Aries, it shows that we may have to make some very individual reactions to how we respond to that and get protective of ourselves and our loved ones and on that level. So it's a very it's going to be an interesting season again, because eclipses do bring in many times a very sudden change. What's interesting about that one too, the one near the end of the month, the lunar eclipse with the full moon in Taurus, is that first off, Taurus represents banks and money and our assets and stuff. And second off, it's literally the day after the last Friday in October, which traditionally in the U.S. and markets, when there's been bad times, they happen on Fridays in October a lot. So could that possibly be another Black Friday that's being set up? People overreact in North Node and Aries in selfish ways and make runs on certain markets or whatever, it could, create that kind of situation. And I'm not an expert business astrologer, but, this is something that's very real in this energy and that kind of energy historically in the past, which, can always be a good data set to kind of assume to know somewhat what may happen in the future. Okay, so that's it for the month of October. I want to get into the week of October, this week, October 2nd through 8th. Both Mercury and Venus change signs after being in the signs they're in for an extended abnormal period of time, because they both went through their retrogrades recently. So they're gonna both be a big story this week, and they both have some other things going on before they change those signs. So that's really what the story is this week, is both Venus and Mercury changing signs, but also having some aspects with other planets. So the first one I want to go through is Mercury, because Mercury is really busy towards that first half of the week. Monday through Thursday, there's a lot of Mercury activity. And so let me do that first. And what we got going on is today, Monday, Mercury is opposite Neptune, and here's the first thing now. Remember, Mercury was, like I said, retrograde in Virgo for a long time, so now it's right at the end of Virgo, the beginning of the week, and it is finally out of the shadow period of that retrograde, which really means, the Mercury things, the things that Mercury rules: communication, information, education, connection, transportation, all those kind of business, educate, those kinds of things are all now going to be moving full steam ahead in the regular world. Okay, so that so that's something to know right away. Mercury is out of that shadow; it's moving fast again. So things are pretty normal with the Mercury ruled things, and so today opposite Neptune. And Mercury opposite Neptune can bring a lot of inspiration and imaginative type of ideas to our mind, but they're not rational. They're not something that is easy to communicate to others in real world terms. They're more like these abstractions. So if anything, at times they can confuse our real world thoughts because they're out of the ordinary. They're right-brained things that are, you know, messing with Mercury's more left-brain way of wanting to be, especially in Virgo. So it can bring a lot of unclarity in the way we're perceiving the world, and it also, you know, therefore, you know, because it's hard to like find words for what we're seeing or feeling, it's very difficult to communicate with others too. And but it still is giving us like a highly sensitive mind. Our mind is like, you know, really sensitive to the environment and picks up on any kind of signals coming out of the environment, both subliminal and right in front of us. And what that actually can do is overstimulate us in reality. You know, Mercury opposite Neptune can be that kind of almost like nervous exhaustion energy that you can get at times, where there's just so much input coming to you that it's information overload, and you just start to, your circuits start to burn out or overload, you know, like a capacitor blowing up, and it just like, it actually starts to like suck energy out of you and get you into like this kind of like almost nervous, exhausted state. The other thing to be aware of when Mercury is opposite Neptune is it's absolutely not a good day to have any kind of serious negotiations or discussions or business type deals or arrangements or agreements, because the reality is, once again, there's too much confusion and things are not really clear in your mind. You might not have all the facts, or like certain information maybe being withheld from you, possibly even purposely. So there's like secret stuff possibly going on, and, you know, and it's also, unfortunately, it is also an aspect of deceptions and lies, where, you know, the person who wants to actually do that, you know, can be initiating that kind of energy because we're more suspect to falling under it. The next day, tomorrow, Tuesday, Mercury goes into a trine with Pluto, right? You know, getting really close to the end here of it, and this is a very positive aspect, because I think what this is going to do is it's going to take some of the insights that we get today on Monday with the Mercury Neptune, and then the mind will start to focus, and not only focus, but almost get like a laser beam, and can really see deeply into why things are happening, why you do certain things you do, why you decide and react. So like just getting a really good insight into our own minds, and even the minds of others, can really understand and see the motivations of others in a non-threatening way, you know, and possibly be even with the trine to be very congruent in like communications with others, and having some profound insights for one another, a thing where we can influence each other's thoughts and want to adjust the way we think based on like the new information we're getting. And it's also a great aspect for being your own counselor, basically being your own analyst, you know, just having, you know, a really deep look in, being your own like inner medicine, basically, you know, getting, you know, into an inner journey where you can really see what it motivates your mind to like think certain ways and get a good handle on that, and you can, and it's also a good one for even getting that kind of energy from other people too, like, you know, doing counseling work or having a conversation with other people where you're really, you know, exposing your inner truths on deep levels and not feeling fearful about that, you know. So it can really be a very strong aspect of that way. And we do have a lot of power and influence. Again, remember, just like I said about Pluto in the monthly thing, you know, we have strength with our words. And Mercury, we can have very profound insights that influence others, that can influence large groups of people even. So, you know, it's really great getting our point across and making a very deep impression in doing so when we do that. So really good energy on Tuesday for that. And then Wednesday is when Mercury does change signs finally. So goes into Libra. It's been in Virgo since July 29th, you guys. So, it's been a long time in Virgo, like 2+ months of being in a sign that it really likes, but it went through that retrograde period in Virgo. So now it's finally going into another sign in Libra. And, Mercury's pretty, it feels all right in Libra still for sure. It's got a little bit of strength there. Not the strength that it has in Virgo, but it definitely has some strength still. And what Mercury does in Libra is it becomes a very careful decision maker and speaker, which can be both good and bad, depending on how we're judging, situations and things. When we're making a decision while Mercury's in Libra the next 2-3 weeks, it's gonna, we want to weigh all the options. That's a really good way of saying it. Like, we want to be very clear and sure that we're making the best choice for ourselves and what we're doing. So that, that's a very positive thing, because we're not impulsive, and our choices are, stronger. They're more, we've got the information and the facts that we need, and now can make the best decision for ourselves. However, that if it gets too far, can become indecisiveness. So Mercury in Libra is where your mind can keep jumping from one side to another when on certain things, and having a hard time making a decision, which it can actually bring up impatience with those you have relationships with, because they can see that, there's something that you're just churning over in your mind over and over and not making a decision about. So it really can bring that energy up too. Now, the other thing about Mercury in Libra is it has high standards. It wants things to be precise, neat, in a certain way, like having a procedure, and like can be very like diplomatic with words, an agreeable decision maker, but it wants to, definitely have like some process that's like a neat kind of process to do that with, but really good for diplomacy, negotiations, making agreements, and having the patience, like, once again, get all the facts, see all the sides, try to see it from the other person's point of view. It can have a lot of charm with Mercury and Libra with our words. We can be very charming, and yet at the same time, we know when we have to stand up for ourselves many times too. Now, the last thing that's going on with Mercury this week is it's going to quincunx Saturn on Thursday, the very next day after it changes signs. There's Saturn's retrograde near the very beginning of Pisces, and this is one where old fears can be triggered under this energy, and a lot of it is because our own thinking is too rigid. It's too stuck in a certain standard. It's not willing to come out of a certain box. It's not willing to expose enough of the real self of what we want and communicate that. So, like, in a way, we can retreat in. We get quiet under a Mercury quincunx Saturn. We can brood and feel even depressed and not even know why we're depressed. Actually, it can be one of those depressions where you can't even put a finger on what it is, but we have a tendency to limit ourselves, and we have to be really careful about being around negative people too. People who have negative talk, and maybe negative talk about themselves or others, have a lot of judgment, because we can fall into the trap of feeding that kind of negative energy, and just feeling like, getting into a kind of half-empty, depressing, pessimistic look at things. Now, what can be done well with Mercury quincunx Saturn. It's a great day for doing detailed work, especially if that requires the mind and or hands or even tools. But yeah, just it's a mind that can be very concentrated. So it's really good for, like, paperwork type stuff, computer work stuff, things that are maybe a little bit monotonous, but it gives the mind something to focus on rather than dwelling on negative thoughts or fears that have been triggered that really are based in the past. So that's Mercury's journey for this week. Now, like I said, Venus has an interesting journey this week too, and it also is going to change signs, but it starts this Tuesday, tomorrow through Thursday, with Venus and Mars are in a sextile with one another right now. They're not exact, but they're within orb of one another. So, like, they're in this sextile with one another. And what happens Tuesday through Thursday is they both lock into a quincunx with Neptune, which means that Neptune is on the midpoint of Venus and Mars. So, so what that really does is it brings up idealism in relationships. It's almost like everybody's looking for the perfect relationship is a good way to see this, and I'm talking like, the perfect blending of a, really mainly on a romantic sexual side, like just looking for that perfect relationship. Or the other thing that people do with this quincunx is they actually sublimate the sexual romantic drive. Maybe they're, giving up, or they're frustrated, or they just have a change of ways of looking at things, and they actually kind of take a more spiritual approach to all that, to the point where one extreme might be like you might actually decide to become abstinent for a while, or to the other point of like just looking for this ideal spiritual partner. Now, one other thing that you can do with this energy too, like I said, it's a lot of sexual, creative, inspiring type of energy together, among these three planets. So the other thing you can do is sublimate that drive and energy into the creative process, whatever you are creative with, whatever you are artistic with. It's a good energy to put into. But we have to remember, these quincunxes between Venus and Mars, they're going to bring up like a mix of romantic delusion, like where we're being like disappointing, like in the sense of like where people really can't live up to these ideals that we have, yet at the same time, so we're kind of being overly idealistic about it, but yet at the same time, behind the scenes, we're trying to manipulate ourselves or other people into that anyway. And so, like, we can really set up kind of like our own like awkward energy with that. It's not something that, at times really our efforts end up being pointless or futile is a good way to say it, and there may be in certain relationships separations required in this energy. The other thing is, like with Neptune here too on this thing, is to be really careful with our health and body and stuff, and not get off our normal regimes that are keeping us healthy, because if we do, we can be susceptible. The body can be susceptible to illnesses. And another thing that happens with this is, because like things don't really work out a lot of times with relationships with this and that idealism that we want and that we're seeking, that you can get very discouraged at times about, life in general and people in particular. And so this is one of those times where at times we may need a friend to give us a pep talk, basically, it's that kind of energy. So the other thing that's interesting that's going on with them, then after that's Tuesday through Thursday, Friday through Sunday, Venus will quincunx Pluto, and Mars squares Pluto. And this is very, very powerful energy. This is like, taking those desires and that energy to an extreme and possibly being very pushy in trying to get what we want. And, it can set up some really, obsessive, possessive type of energy with other people, and that can bring us into some very strong situations that can really blow up and get out of hand. We have to be really careful with Mars-Pluto energy in particular, getting into places of like even violence, like, subordination issues, like dominance issues, things like that, that are really unbalanced when people are not getting what they want and they really want to push and coerce someone, manipulate someone into getting what they want. There can be a lot of frustration, a lot of difficulty in understanding what other people are doing. It's a really, in all honesty, it's a time where it's best to avoid people who are difficult for you. Best to get away from people, even separate yourself if you have to, from physically, from people who are difficult. This is a time where you don't want to be around people who have proclivity for violence, or put yourself in a place where, or a situation where the possibility of that is greater than normal, because this energy feeds that, and especially because people are not feeling like they're getting what they want. So they can be very, very pushy with this energy, and really the best way to use this energy is actually to creatively transform your own life and world, and that starts with, like, it's saying, hey, you got to let go of certain ways of thinking, like you can, control relationships and other people, and trust that, the right, people will come. But like, this is really trying to teach us who we want in our lives and who we don't want in our lives. These three together, and are telling us, hey, get a grip on this and get yourself away from the people who are not a good influence for you, or who can be somehow dangerous to you, and work with those who are willing to transform and create something new with you. So very interesting energy. And then Venus goes into Virgo, which is and that happens on Sunday, and Venus has been in Leo since June 6th, you guys, a real long time, because we went through that retrograde period, and now it's going into Virgo, which traditionally is the sign of its fall. It's a weak sign for the love goddess to be in. And why is that? Because we adopt somehow an attitude that we need to serve others in order to get the love we want, which can be really sweet, serving others. And if that duty is called to us, that may be what we have to do. But if that's what we're doing in order to get love ourselves, we are accepting less than what we truly are valuing ourselves for. And so that can be that's why it's in fall here. It's learning to love yourself and value yourself first, and not settle for something less in your relationships with others because you need love so bad. It's like, so it's really very interesting on that level. But once again, we do have those higher standards in relationships and in love. So we have a tendency to neaten ourselves up too when Venus is in Virgo, maybe whatever it may be, go and get ourselves, neaten ourselves up, discipline ourselves, try to, be critical, of ourselves rather than the habits of our loved ones, which is another part of the problem of Venus in Virgo, where we have difficulties in our relationships because we get too judgmental of our loved ones. So we're going to have a few weeks of Venus in Virgo to go through all that before she goes into Libra, and we'll be very, very happy again. And the one other thing I wanted to mention was Saturday, there is a Sun quincunx Jupiter too. This can give us really highly optimistic energy, but we have to be really careful about adopting a privileged attitude too, and thinking we just deserve things and not really willing to put the energy in to get what we want back out of it. We can adopt an arrogant, self-righteous tone, but and it can turn certain people off, but we never really get negative with it. We stay positive and optimistic. It's just like we can kind of be pushy and at the same time trying to get other people or other things to do what we should maybe be doing, not willing to put in our share at times. So, but we can be very willing to help others, especially in emergency situations. We can be very good at knowing what someone wants in a particular situation. And at times too, this aspect can bring us an unexpected good luck thing that may happen. So, that's something that some of us may experience too. All right, got a long time because we had the week and the month to do. This is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. This is a free service, a free video blog that I've been doing for years. It's on YouTube. If you have a YouTube account, please become a follower. If you liked what you saw, turn on your notifications so that you know when I post the blog. And please pass the link on to somebody else right now that you know who might be interested in it. Let them make that decision. You got a lot of contacts in there in your phone. If you've done it already for me, find someone else to do it too. Remember, the blog is also available on podcasts. You don't have to watch the YouTube thing. Look it up on your favorite podcasts. Astrological Winds channel. It's also on Instagram. Become a follower there, or you can friend me at Matthew with 2 T's Lawton, Lauten on Facebook, and I post the link there. I am a professional astrologer. I would really appreciate it if you guys would support me when you or someone you know needs a reading. I've been doing readings for 20 years. I was professionally trained in doing so. Birth charts, predictive, relationship, children's, specific questions, all deep soul stuff, anything you're kind of interested in. Start the process up by emailing me, and there's no commitment in doing that, and that's at matthue823@gmail.com. Also, I have beginner classes available for anyone who's interested in that. And also, if your group is looking for a speaker, lecture, class, mini readings, entertainment for some kind of event, once again, please don't hesitate to email me and ask me about it. Can't hurt to do that. And it's matthue823@gmail.com. Now, remember, guys, next week we're going to get that first eclipse. So we're going to get the new moon in Libra, and it'll be a solar eclipse. We'll get deep into that. I'll see y'all next week, and, use this energy with Mercury.